Good evening, and welcome back to Dr. Spooky. Tonight, we are leaving the sun-drenched streets of the South far behind. We are trading the humidity for the biting, absolute cold of upstate New York. We are journeying deep into the forgotten heart of the Adirondack wilderness, to a town called Oakhaven. It is a town swallowed by millions of acres of silent pines, where winter isolates communities for months at a time, and where the closest state trooper is an hour away down a winding, icy road. In places like Oakhaven, survival depends on your neighbors. But what happens when the people you rely on for survival are the very ones you should fear the most? Tonight, we open the files on 5 individuals who moved to the mountains looking for peace, only to find that the isolation of the deep woods is the perfect breeding ground for human depravity. These are not ghost stories. These are the documented accounts of ordinary people who discovered that when you scream in the wilderness, and the only ones to hear you are the monsters living next door, silence is the only option left. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dr. Spooky for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, put on your heaviest coat. Let us step into the freezing darkness of Oakhaven, where civilization ends and terror begins. Elias Thorne took the job at the Blackwood estate because he was desperate. At 32 years old, his debts in Albany had become unmanageable. The offer of 6 months of free housing, plus a substantial salary just to keep an eye on an empty summer mansion in the Adirondacks, seemed like a lifeline tossed from heaven. The Blackwood estate sat on 400 acres bordering Oakhaven, accessible only by a private 3-mile driveway that required a plow truck to navigate past November. The owners, a banking family from Manhattan, wintered in Palm Beach. They just wanted someone to ensure the pipes did not freeze and the roof did not collapse under the weight of the snow. Elias arrived in late October, just as the last of the autumn leaves were turning brown and brittle. The silence of the place was immense. It was not a peaceful quiet. It was a heavy, oppressive absence of sound that felt like a weight against his eardrums. The mansion itself was a sprawling, Gilded Age monstrosity of stone and dark timber. Elias settled into the caretaker's quarters above the detached 6-car garage. It was comfortable, modern, and warm, a stark contrast to the main house, which had been drained of water and covered in dust sheets, standing like a mausoleum across the courtyard. The first month was peaceful. Elias fell into a routine of plowing the long drive, checking the perimeter fences, and reading the stack of books he had brought. He went into Oakhaven once a week for supplies. The locals at the general store were polite, but in a frosty, tight-lipped way. They took his money and offered brief nods, but no one engaged in conversation. When he mentioned he was working at the Blackwood place, the cashier, an older woman with eyes like chipped granite, paused for a fraction of a second before handing him his change. She said, "Stay warm up there." But it sounded less like well-wishing and more like a warning. The real winter hit in December. A blizzard dumped 3 feet of snow in 24 hours, sealing the estate off completely. The power flickered but held, thanks to the massive backup generator the Blackwoods had installed. It was during the isolation of the storm that Elias started noticing the anomalies. He had been instructed to do a weekly walkthrough of the main house to check for leaks or animal intrusions. During his first few visits, he had felt merely like an intruder in a rich person's museum. But in the dead silence of the blizzard, the house felt hostile. He found the first oddity in the basement. It was a cavernous space with a concrete floor, housing the massive boilers that heated the mansion. Along the back wall was a heavy, steel fire door that looked out of place in a residential home. Elias assumed it was a wine cellar or a storm shelter. What troubled him was the locking mechanism. It was a high-security deadbolt, but it was installed on the outside of the door. Whatever was in that room was not meant to be kept out. It was meant to be kept in. Elias, driven by a boredom that was rapidly souring into anxiety, tried the keys on the master ring the family had given him. None fit. A week later, while clearing out some old files in the garage office to make room for his own gear, he found a logbook from the previous caretaker, a man named Arthur Pence. The logs were mundane for the first 3 months, weather reports, maintenance notes, but the entries for January of the previous year changed. January 14th. Thought I heard the basement door banging again. Wind must be getting down the bulkhead. January 22nd. Found footprints outside the main house windows in fresh snow. Too big for deer. Maybe a bear woke up early. Resetting traps. February 3rd. The noises in the main house are not the wind. I do not like going down there. I think I am going to terminate the contract early. The log ended there. Elias knew from the hiring agency that Arthur Pence had supposedly quit suddenly, citing family issues, and moved out west. Elias tried to shake the feeling of dread. Isolation did strange things to the mind. He focused on his work, but the steel door in the basement drew him back. In mid-January, during another brutal cold snap where temperatures dropped to 20 degrees below zero, the main boiler in the big house tripped offline. Elias had to go down to reset it. The basement was freezing. As he walked toward the boiler room, his flashlight beam swung across the steel door. The dust on the floor in front of it had been disturbed. Elias felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He lived alone. No one had been down here in weeks. He stepped closer. The marks in the dust were drag marks. Something heavy had been pulled away from the door. He put his hand on the steel door handle. It was unlocked. Elias opened the door an inch. The smell hit him instantly. Cold copper. And something sickly sweet, like spoiled meat preserved in ice. He pushed the door open with his flashlight beam, cutting the darkness. It was not a wine cellar. It was a bare concrete room, perhaps 12 feet square. In the center of the floor was a large, deep chest freezer, unplugged. The lid was propped open with a piece of 2x4 lumber. Elias walked toward it, every instinct screaming at him to run back to his truck and drive until he hit Albany. He looked inside. The freezer was not empty. Curled at the bottom, frozen solid in a fetal position, was a man wearing a faded Carhartt jacket. His skin was blue-gray. His eyes were frozen open in a mask of absolute terror. It was the man whose driver's license photo Elias had seen in the office file. Arthur Pence. He had not moved out west. He had been locked in this room, and eventually, when the cold became too much, he had climbed into the unplugged freezer trying to preserve his own body heat before freezing to death. Elias spun around to run and stopped cold. Standing in the doorway of the concrete room was Mr. Blackwood, the family patriarch. He was wearing pristine winter hunting gear and holding a high-powered rifle loosely at his side. Behind him stood the woman from the general store in Oakhaven. Mr. Blackwood spoke calmly. We saw the boiler alarm go off remotely. We flew up to Teterboro and drove in. I told Martha the new man would probably find his way down here eventually. Curiosity is such a troublesome trait in staff. The woman, Martha, stepped forward, holding the keys to the steel door. She said, Arthur was a good worker, until he started asking the town council about the zoning for this place, about why the Blackwoods need a room that locks from the outside. Mr. Blackwood raised the rifle. It is a shame, Elias. It is so hard to find good help that understands discretion. Now, we will have to wait until the spring thaw to clear this mess up. Elias Thorne was reported missing in March by his creditors in Albany. The local police in Oakhaven did a cursory check and spoke to the lovely Blackwood family, who expressed shock that their reliable caretaker had vanished without a trace. The case was closed due to lack of leads. The Blackwood estate is currently hiring for the upcoming winter season. Clara Vance moved to Oakhaven to heal. After a violent assault in Brooklyn that left her with physical scars and crippling agoraphobia, The idea of a small cabin tucked away in the Adirondacks felt like the only safe option. She bought a small A-frame on 10 acres of sugar maples, 3 miles outside of the town center. For the first 3 months, she saw almost no one. She worked remotely, ordered supplies for delivery, and slowly began to lower her guard as the silence of the woods seeped into her bones. Her nearest neighbors were the Millers, Gerald and Betsy. They lived a half-mile down the road in a farmhouse that looked like a postcard. They were in their late 70s, the kind of couple that finished each other's sentences and always seemed to be smiling. They introduced themselves in late February, just as the sap began to run. Betsy arrived on Clara's porch with a loaf of zucchini bread and a pint of maple syrup that glowed like liquid amber in the morning light. Betsy explained, "We tapped the trees on your back 5 acres, dear. The previous owner always let us. We give you 10% of the finished syrup as payment. Best syrup in the state, people say." Clara, charmed by their wholesome presence and eager to establish a safe connection, agreed immediately. The relationship grew quickly. Gerald, a man with hands like gnarled oak roots, would plow Clara's driveway after snowstorms before she even woke up. Betsy would bring over stews and pies, fussing over Clara's thin frame. For a woman recovering from trauma, their grandparently affection felt like a warm blanket. By March, sugaring season was in full swing. The air around the Miller property always smelled of wood smoke and sweet, boiling sap. Clara began walking down to their sugar shack, a rustic wooden building with steam billowing from the roof, to watch the process. Inside, it was hot and humid. A massive stainless steel evaporator pan bubbled furiously over a roaring wood fire. Gerald would stand over it for hours, skimming foam, checking the temperature with an obsessive focus. He told her, "It is all about the finish. You have to know exactly when to pull it off the heat. Too soon, it is watery. Too late, it crystallizes. Most people do not have the patience for perfection." Clara found the sugar shack comforting. It was warm, industrious, and ancient. The first crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday evening. Clara had walked down to drop off a casserole dish Betsy had left behind. The lights in the farmhouse were off, but smoke was pouring from the sugar shack. Clara approached the shack door. It was usually propped open to vent the heat, but tonight it was closed. She heard Gerald's voice inside, not gentle now, but strained and grunting with effort. "Hold the legs, Betsy, for Christ's sake, hold the legs steady." Clara froze. She heard a heavy splash, followed by the furious sizzling sound of liquid hitting a hot metal firebox. She backed away silently, her heart rate tripling. She told herself she had misheard. They were moving heavy equipment. They were dealing with a deer carcass, but the seed of paranoia, planted during her assault in the city, began to sprout fast in the isolation of the woods. 2 days later, Clara was helping Betsy label jars in the farmhouse kitchen. The local news was on a small radio on the counter. The announcer mentioned a missing person case, a hiker from New Jersey, last seen 2 towns over, his car found abandoned at a trailhead near Oakhaven. Betsy tisked, carefully gluing a label onto a jar. She said, "Terrible. People come up here. They do not respect the woods. They get lost so easily." Clara watched Betsy's hands. They were steady. Too steady. That night, Clara could not sleep. The smell of the boiling syrup drifted up the hill to her cabin. It smelled different tonight. Underneath the sweetness of the maple, there was something else, something metallic, something copper. At 3 a.m, unable to stand the not knowing, Clara put on her boots and crept down the road through the woods, avoiding the driveway. The sugar shack was dark. The fire was banked for the night. She slipped inside. The air was thick with residual heat and that strange, underlying copper smell. She turned on her small flashlight, keeping the beam low. She walked to the massive evaporator pan. The syrup inside was dark, almost ready for the final filtering. Near the back of the shack was a workbench where Gerald kept his tools. Next to it was a large, industrial-grade meat grinder clamped to the table. It looked recently cleaned, but in the textured grip of the handle, Clara saw a speck of dried red. She turned back to the evaporator pan. Gerald had said they filtered the syrup 3 times before bottling to remove sugar sand and impurities. There was a large metal sieve resting on a bucket next to the pan, filled with the debris skimmed off the last batch. Clara shone her light into it. It was mostly brown foam and blackened bits of wood ash, but glinting in the mess was something that was not wood or sugar. Clara reached in with a trembling hand and pulled it out. It was a silver wedding band, thick, a man's style. The inscription inside was worn, but readable. Forever, J&M 2012. She was not looking at sugar sand. She was looking at what was left after Gerald Miller's perfection process. The hikers, the drifters, the people who went missing in the vast Adirondack wilderness. They were not lost. They were being processed, boiled down until nothing was left but sweet, amber liquid and a few metal trinkets that would not melt. Clara dropped the ring and ran. She did not go back to her cabin. She ran through the woods to the main road and flagged down a salt truck 3 miles away. The state police raided the Miller farm the next morning. They found the meat grinder. They found a collection of driver's licenses hidden under a floorboard in the barn, belonging to 6 different missing people over the last 10 years. And in the ashes of the firebox under the evaporator pan, they found bone fragments that had been burned almost to dust. Gerald and Betsy Miller were arrested without incident. As they were led away in handcuffs, Betsy looked at the state trooper and said, with genuine confusion, "But everyone said it was the best syrup in the county. We were just giving them what they wanted." Clara never went back to Oakhaven. She lives in a city again now, where the noise of the traffic drowns out the silence, but she never eats pancakes, and the smell of maple sugar makes her want to scream. Marcus spent his whole life studying water, but he had never seen a drought like the one in Oakhaven in the summer of 2021. He worked for the state. He was sent to watch the Oakhaven Reservoir. It was a huge man-made lake that gave drinking water to 3 counties. The heat was terrible. It did not rain for 2 months. The water level dropped fast. It went down feet every week. Mudflats appeared that had not seen the sun since the 1940s. Marcus rented a small cabin near the water, but he became interested in what the water was hiding. Before it was a lake, the valley was a town called Vance Creek. In 1948, the government forced everyone to leave. They knocked down the houses, then they built a dam and flooded the valley. As the water dropped lower, the skeleton of the old town came back. Stone walls broke through the surface. The top of the old church rose from the center of the lake. It was covered in gray mud. Marcus took a canoe out in the evenings. He made maps of the ruins. It was spooky. He paddled over old streets. He looked down through the clear water into the basements of homes where families used to live. In the town of Oakhaven, the locals were acting strange. They did not like talking about the drought. An old man told Marcus at a bar, "Some things should stay drowned. That valley was cursed." Marcus thought it was just a ghost story, but then he saw something his science could not explain. He was mapping the old lumber mill. The stones were black. They were burned, deep burns. It looked like a huge fire happened before the flood. He checked other buildings, the bank, the store. They were all burned too. Marcus went to the library. He looked at old records from 1948. The official story said the town was empty when they flooded it, but he found an old box of reports. In the winter of 1947, right before the dam was finished, there were many accidental fires in Vance Creek. The lumber mill burned down, the foreman died, the store burned down, the owner died. Marcus realized the truth. The town did not leave quietly. The people who refused to sell their land were not bought out. They were burned out. The rich families in Oakhaven today were the children of the people who burned down Vance Creek. Marcus realized the lake was not just water, it was a crime scene. He needed proof. He took his canoe out early the next morning. The water was very low. He paddled to the ruins of the foreman's house. It was now a mud island in the middle of the lake. He walked into the old basement. He started digging in the mud with a small shovel. 3 feet down, he hit something hard. It was a rusty metal box. He opened it. Inside were journals. They proved that the town leaders had threatened to kill the foreman. And under the box, wrapped in a burnt blanket, were bones, a skull, small. It looked like a child, and the skull was broken. Marcus sat back in the mud. He felt sick. They had murdered these people, and then they covered the bodies with water. Then he heard an engine. Marcus stood up. A fast boat was coming straight for him. In the boat were 3 men. He recognized the sheriff of Oakhaven. They were not coming to talk. Marcus realized the drought had revealed the secret, and the men had been watching him. He jumped into his canoe. He paddled fast toward the dam. The motorboat got closer. The sheriff yelled, holding up a hunting rifle, "Hey, water boy, you are trespassing. Stop the boat." Marcus did not stop. He knew if he stopped, he would end up like the bones in the mud, just another secret at the bottom of the lake. He reached the dam wall. The boat pulled up next to him. Marcus threw the metal box up onto the walkway on top of the dam. Then, he dove out of the canoe into the deep water. He heard gunshots hitting the water around him. He swam deep. He let the current pull him into the intake pipe. It was dangerous, but staying on the surface was suicide. Marcus washed out of the pipe 2 miles down the river. He was hurt. He was half drowned, but he was alive. A fisherman found him. He had lost the evidence. When the police went to look for the box on the dam, it was gone. The sheriff said he never saw it. Marcus lost his job. People said he was crazy from the heat, but the drought ended that fall. The rain came, the water rose again, and the black ruins of Vance Creek disappeared under the water. The secrets were buried again. But Marcus knows what is down there. And he knows that the nice people of Oakhaven are only nice as long as the water stays high enough to hide their history. For a small town hidden in the mountains, Oakhaven had a strange secret. It had a lot of young, rich widows, women whose husbands had died too soon. Sarah Jenkins did not know this when she met Patrick Cole in New York City. Patrick was handsome, he was rich, and he had a rough, strong look that came from growing up in the woods. He was everything her old boyfriends were not. He made choices fast. He made her feel safe. And he only looked at her. They got married in 6 months. It happened so fast. Patrick wanted to move back home to Oakhaven. He wanted to live in the big wooden house his grandfather built on a hill looking over the valley. He said he wanted to raise a family far away from the dirty city. Sarah was tired of the city noise. She was in love. So she said yes. The first year in Oakhaven was like a dream. The house was huge. Patrick's family lived on the hills nearby. They welcomed her with open arms. They were a close family. They were proud that they helped build the town a long time ago. There was Patrick's mother, Eleanor. She was a tough woman with gray hair and eyes that watched everything. There were his 2 brothers, big men who cut down trees for the family business. They treated Sarah like a doll, like she was something special that might break. Sarah felt like they protected her too much, but Patrick said it was just their way. He kissed her head and said, "We take care of our own up here." The only bad thing in their perfect life was Patrick's health. He was born with a bad heart. The family talked about it in whispers. He took pills every day. He went to see a special doctor in the city once a month. Eleanor told Sarah one day in the garden, "Do not worry, dear. The Colemen have weak hearts, but strong minds. We always make sure they live long lives." The way she said it made Sarah feel cold. Things got strange in October. It was around their 1-year anniversary. Sarah woke up one night. Patrick was not in bed. She went downstairs. She found him in his office. He was sitting in the dark with his mother and brothers. They stopped talking the moment she walked in. On the table was an old book made of leather. It was open to a page with a family tree drawn on it, and next to it was a small box. Inside was a glass bottle filled with dark liquid. Patrick stood up fast. His hands were freezing cold. He walked her back to the stairs and said, "Just family business, honey." A week later, Sarah started feeling sick. At first, she was just tired. Then she started feeling dizzy. She felt sick to her stomach. Her hair started falling out in the shower. Patrick took very good care of her. He brought her food in bed. He made special teas that his mother told him to make. He called them mountain medicine. They tasted bitter, like dirt. Sarah got weaker. The local doctor was a cousin of Patrick's family. He told Sarah she was just stressed. He said her body was having a hard time with the mountain air. He gave her pills that made her sleep for 18 hours a day. When she was awake, Sarah felt scared. She felt like she was disappearing in her own house. One afternoon, Patrick went out with his brothers. Sarah forced herself to get out of bed. She had not taken the sleeping pills. She hid them under her mattress. Her head was clear, but her body felt heavy as a rock. She went to Patrick's office. She found the leather book hidden in a locked drawer. She used a letter opener to break the lock. It was not just a family tree. It was a list of deaths. She looked at the names of the Cole family going back 100 years. Every man in the family died young, usually before they were 50. They all died of heart failure. But next to their names were the names of their wives. Sarah saw Patrick's grandfather. His first wife died at 24. The book said she had a stomach sickness. His second wife died at 26. The book said she had a bad fall. She saw Patrick's father. His wife, Eleanor, was still alive. But there was a note next to their marriage date. It said, "Strange blood. She will likely survive." Then she found Patrick's name. Next to his name was hers, Sarah Jenkins, city blood, weak. And next to that, written in pencil, was a date. November 1st, 2022. That was 3 days away. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the chest. The Cole men did not just have weak hearts. They were staying alive by using something else. The mountain medicine, the tea, the care. It was not love. It was a harvest. They were slowly poisoning their wives. They were stealing their life to keep their sons alive a few years longer. It was some dark magic the family had used for a long time. Eleanor was not just a mother. She was a survivor. She was the only one strong enough to live through it. Sarah heard the front door open. She heard Patrick's heavy boots on the floor. He called out, "Sarah, honey, I brought you your tea." She did not have the strength to run. She was miles from the nearest town. She was surrounded by a family that owned everything in Oakhaven. She heard his footsteps on the stairs. Sarah grabbed the sharp brass letter opener from the desk. She did not hide. She stood behind the door. She was shaking. Her body was weak from the poison, but her mind was burning with anger. Patrick stepped into the room. He was holding a hot mug of the bitter tea. Sarah did not scream. She drove the letter opener into his neck with all the strength she had left. He dropped the mug. He grabbed his throat. He fell to his knees, staring at her with wide eyes. He looked shocked. He whispered, You were supposed to be weak." Sarah stepped over him as he fell on the rug. She did not feel sorry. She felt a sudden rush of her own strength coming back. She grabbed his keys and his wallet. She stepped out of the house into the cold mountain air. Eleanor was just pulling up the driveway in her car. Sarah did not stop. She got into Patrick's truck. She drove right into Eleanor's car, pushing it off the driveway and into a snowbank. Sarah drove for 4 hours. She did not stop until she reached a hospital in Syracuse. Doctors found poison in her blood, arsenic, and something from a plant called foxglove. It was in the tea. Patrick survived the attack, but the wound to his throat meant he could never speak again. The family told the police it was a fight between husband and wife. They said Sarah was crazy. No charges were filed against her. The family wanted it quiet. They did not want anyone to find the book. Sarah lives in California now. She is healthy again, but she checks the news for Oakhaven online sometimes. She sees the Cole men dying young, and she sees the news when they get engaged to pretty young women from out of town. And she wonders, if any of them will be strong enough to survive the cure. Everyone in Oakhaven knew that Beatrice Vane was crazy. She lived in a falling-apart farmhouse at the end of a dirt road called Miller's Lane. Her house was filled with stacks of old newspapers, broken farm tools, and 10 wild barn cats. She was the town outcast. She shouted wild stories at the mailman. No one had seen her in the grocery store in 10 years. When she died in the winter of 2023, no one was surprised. She froze to death on her own back porch. It looked like she locked herself out. The surprise came for her niece, Jenny. Jenny was 25 years old. She lived in Chicago. She had not spoken to her Aunt Beatrice since she was a little girl, but she was the only family left. So she inherited the house on Miller's Lane. Jenny arrived in Oakhaven in February. It was gray and slushy. Her plan was simple: hire a crew to throw away the junk, sell the land, and get back to the city in 1 week. Going into the house was awful. It smelled like cats and mold. There were piles of trash everywhere. You had to turn sideways just to walk down the hall. But in the middle of the mess, Jenny found something strange. The door to the cellar was not made of wood. It was made of thick steel, and it had 3 brand new locks on it. Beatrice was wearing the keys around her neck when she died. The police gave them to Jenny. Jenny unlocked the steel door. The air rushed past her. It was cold, dry, and it smelled like electricity. The cellar was spotless. The floor was painted gray. There were metal shelves along the walls, and on the shelves were thousands of things. Jenny walked down the aisle. She was confused. There were jars of dirt with labels on them. There were stacks of notebooks. The notebooks were full of writing. Beatrice had written down everything the town leaders did: the police chief, the mayor, the pastor, and in the back corner, there was a row of computer servers. They were humming with power. They were connected to the internet with high-speed cables that should not exist in the woods. Beatrice was not a crazy hoarder. She was a spy. Jenny sat at the computer desk. There was no password. She opened a folder called Video. There were thousands of videos. Beatrice had hidden cameras all over the forest. She had cameras in her attic pointing at the town. She even had microphones hidden in public places. Jenny clicked on a file from July 2018. It was labeled The Quarry. The video was dark and grainy. It showed the old rock quarry outside town. A truck pulled up. 3 men got out. Jenny recognized the town manager. He was a man who shook her hand at the funeral yesterday. In the video, the men dragged a body wrapped in plastic out of the truck. They tied heavy rocks to it, and they threw it into the deep water of the quarry. Jenny felt sick. She clicked another file. It was audio only. It was the pastor's voice. He was talking to a drug dealer about using the church basement to hide shipments. Beatrice knew everything, every affair, every bribe, every buried body in Oakhaven for the last 30 years. The trash upstairs was a disguise. The crazy cat lady act was a show to keep people away. Jenny realized why her aunt died on the porch. She did not lock herself out. Someone locked the door behind her. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Jenny froze. She had not heard a car outside. A voice called out, "Jenny, are you down there?" It was Sheriff Brody. He sounded friendly. He said, "We saw your car outside. Just wanted to make sure you were okay." Beatrice left a big mess. His footsteps were heavy on the kitchen floor above her head. He was walking toward the cellar door. Jenny looked at the computers. 30 years of secrets. She looked at the steel door at the top of the stairs. She realized then that Beatrice was not just watching the town was watching her back. They were waiting for her to make a mistake. And now, they were watching Jenny. Sheriff Brody appeared at the top of the stairs. His shadow was big against the light. He was not smiling anymore. He was holding his gun. He said, "You found the nest, didn't you? Beatrice always said she would burn this town down if we hurt her. I guess you were the match." Jenny did not try to argue. She knew he would not listen. She hit a button on the keyboard that Beatrice had labeled fail-safe. The computer started to whine. The fan spun fast. A loading bar appeared on the screen. Uploading to news server, Chicago Tribune. 1% complete. Jenny stood up to face the sheriff. She yelled, "It is going to the city. Sheriff, all of it, the quarry, the church, the money, it is all uploading right now." The sheriff looked at the screen. Then he looked at Jenny. His friendly face was gone. He looked terrified and angry. He hissed, "You stupid girl. You have no idea what you have done. We keep the peace here. We do what we have to do to survive." He fired the gun. The bullet hit Jenny in the shoulder. She spun around. She fell against the computer rack. She watched the screen. 45% complete. She heard the sheriff running down the stairs. He was not coming to arrest her. Jenny grabbed a heavy glass jar from the shelf. As the sheriff reached the bottom step, she smashed the jar against the main power box. Sparks showered down. The lights died. The humming stopped. The upload failed at 52%. Jenny died in the basement. The police said it was an accident. They said a robber thought she was an intruder and shot her. Then, a fire started in the cellar because of bad wiring. It burned the farmhouse to the ground. It destroyed everything inside. Oakhaven is still a quiet, peaceful town. The neighbors look out for each other. They all say it is a tragedy about poor Beatrice and her niece, but sometimes, when the internet is slow in town or when the radio sounds strange, the people of Oakhaven look at each other with nervous eyes. They wonder just how much of that 52% made it out into the world before the fire took the rest. The snow is falling again in Oakhaven. It covers the tracks, it buries the evidence, and silence returns to the valley. The scary thing about these stories is not the violence. It is realizing how weak our safety really is. We like to believe that laws protect us, no matter where we go. But the truth is, geography matters. Isolation changes the rules. In the deep woods, doing the right thing is a luxury. Survival is the only thing that counts. The people we met tonight learned too late that when a small town decides to keep a secret, they will do anything to make sure it stays hidden. Ask yourself this question. Are your neighbors nice because they are good people? Or are they nice because you have not given them a reason to be bad? Think about that as you lock your doors tonight. I am Dr. Spooky. Stay out of the woods, watch the shadows, and I will see you in the next nightmare.